it's just Jersey, man. We're a different breed. Place. Who doesn't want to win in Jersey?
What's up, everybody? John Forger here, straight down from the barn. I got with me, as always, the greatest mind in wrestling, Eric Winnuck. We got a special guest here today, Dan Hilt, Rutgers wrestler, now actor, coach. He does it all. How you doing, Dan?
I'm good. How you guys doing today?
Oh, we're doing good. We're doing good.
Good to see you.
Yeah, this is John and I were joking. This is the Rooster broadcast because we, Dan's such a busy man. He's a man of so many trades that, we got to find his time, his schedule. So, we work for Dan today. So that's our big thing. So we got the coffee going. I got the LA cup for Dan.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
So we're ready to roll.
Nice.
I appreciate it.
Yep. So Dan, why don't we just jump right in? So for those who don't know, we know obviously you have a Hall of Fame wrestling career, 3-time state place winner, 4-time varsity letter winner at Rutgers University, co-founder of Yale St Wrestling Club. But what we want to do is we want to continue our series in kind of wrestlers and entertainment. We had spoken with Jeremy Barreler and Ben Hatta about, kind of the work they were doing for A&E and obviously doing the Foxcatcher documentary. So you're on the flip side, you're on sort of the entertainment acting side. So if you can kind of tell us about your road into the acting scene, how it started, has always been a lifelong passion, and kind of what got you to where you are today.
Yeah. Interestingly, I was acting before I was wrestling, actually. So I was a child actor, which kind of happened by mistake. My neighbor was a talent manager, was interested in my brother. Actually, he had blonde hair, blue eyes. I had bright red hair, freckles, and I was a crazy person. And I just went along with him one day to some, commercial audition or something that he had. And she ended up wanting to sign me, I guess. And I mean, that's kind of the basics of how it started. I had always been, into my parents took me to see a show when I was probably like 8 years old, and I was just obsessed with it, and putting on costumes, running around the house, performing it, making my family come sit in the living room, and I even literally built sets in my backyard and would invite the neighbors and stuff. So I was doing all that when I was like 8, 9, 10, and then just started doing commercials and stuff. A lot of cereal commercials. A lot of people in the wrestling world know me as Sonny because I was an edge kid. And when I first started going, and I didn't start wrestling in the 7th grade, so I started a little late. And at the time that I started, finding my groove at Edge, I had a national Sunny Delight commercial on that was playing all the time. And so Ernie,
that's great.
Ernie and everyone started calling me Sonny, and a lot of them, if I see them to this day, they still do. And I used to enter tournaments under Sonny Hilt for a long time. I considered changing it completely, but so that's kind of how it happened. So that came first. Then I found wrestling, kind of put the acting on the back burner, but was always still doing it, but really threw everything into wrestling. And then, because I always knew that's still what I wanted to pursue. Yep. And so when I got to Rutgers, I was on a wrestling scholarship and I was a theater major. So I was doing plays and wrestling.
Fantastic.
So it was an interesting path that.
Absolutely. It's funny, Dan, because when you talk about, when you were a child doing the videos and just falling in love with, the whole concept of being on screen. I've seen documentaries on Ben Stiller because as a film fan myself, very similar stories to a lot of guys growing up kind of in their backyards with a video camera and just doing skits on their own, just falling in love with it. And I remember we were talking to Jeremy and Ben Hatta, and they had a very similar story about just working with that video camera and kind of on their own. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it's that passion as a kid, kind of like when you're out playing a football, I want to be a football player one day. It starts in your backyard. So I think it's the same thing with your career. So I've heard that from multiple sources, from big time actors, from guys like yourself. And I think you're right. It's just that passion as a kid, starting with something small, and it leads to something bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big believer in exposing kids to artists, any medium. I mean, obviously kids love movies and TV and stuff, but theater is one of my favorite things to do. It's one of my favorite things to see. that's kind of what took me. But yeah, making home movies. There's that new Spielberg has a new movie coming out. That's kind of an autobiography about how he grew up making movies from the age of like 8 or 10 years old. And yeah, it's always something like that that kind of gets the ball rolling.
It's the passion, man. It's not always a story of I just got discovered in the grocery store by some guy and say, hey, why don't you go act?
That's the rare one.
Yep. So why don't we talk about your career a little bit? Because for those who may or may not know, you've obviously had some pretty big roles in some major Hollywood films, including American Gangster. Great scene that you're in, obviously, kind of with the situation with the cop and the mom. But let's talk about being kind of your wrestling background. Why don't you talk to us about your experience in the movie Foxcatcher, and especially as a Division I wrestler, what it was like being on the set of that film, and maybe anything you learned that maybe you didn't know about that RTC and about the story of obviously Schultz in Foxcatcher.
Yeah. I learned a lot, actually. It's funny because, like I said, I started wrestling a little later than is typical, especially in Jersey. So 7th grade. And so when I started wrestling, it was right around the time, I think, when Dave was killed.
Yeah.
So I wasn't quite aware. Obviously, as I got older and was introduced to all these wrestlers, these American wrestlers, foreign wrestlers, whatever. Ernie was real big on that. Used to have tapes, back before everything was so easy. He'd have tapes, and I hear he still does that. Of Satiev and Fitzayev and everybody and Schultz. So of course I learned who he was. So by the time I was doing Foxcatcher, I was very aware of, the story we were there to tell. And, regardless, I think of what wrestling fans think of that movie, because it does have, it's a dark, weird tone. It's, I think, very important that this movie was made about this great American wrestler and the horrible tragedy that happened. And so on set, man, I got to hang out with Nancy Schultz a whole bunch, where we would, there'd be nights where just me, Nancy, Ruffalo, and Channing would be sitting around drinking. Jesse Jansen, Corey Jansen, John Gira, who I met, who was a Team Foxcatcher member. Him and I got pretty close, and just hearing the stories of what was going on back then. And, I think the craziness aside, just the fact that there was this unprecedented thing happening for American wrestlers, where they were getting to wrestle for being paid or to live for free and live for free on this compound. And, that hadn't been a thing yet. So just hearing the history of how that all started, obviously horrible ending. But being on set was eye-opening, because I learned a lot of things that I didn't know, that maybe the typical person doesn't know unless they were there, getting to hang out with that group of people, which was really, really cool, really special.
Good stuff.
Nice. So what are you doing now? Anything coming in the pipeline that you're working on?
Always hustling. It's one of the things about the acting world, man. It's unforgiving. It's tough. It's something all these years later that I'm still trying to come to terms with, because, as a wrestler or an athlete in general, you're kind of taught, you work hard, you're gonna get to where you want to be. And acting's not quite like that. I've been working hard for a long time. It's a lot of luck involved, a lot of right place, right time stuff. But this past year I was on 4 different episodes of TV shows. I have a little recurring role on a show called FBI that's on CBS.
I was going to say, you've done a couple of police dramas and things of that nature. Talk about that.
Yeah. As I've gotten older, I guess I just have that look. I always tell Donnie that I'm more of a cop than he is, because I play one better on TV. So hopefully there's more of that to come, more FBI. It's kind of a write you in as we go basis. And I'm trying to I have a couple of my own scripts that I'm trying to get made. Excellent. And I've been in pre-production for one of them for a while, trying to figure it out. It's always a tough road.
Well, I'll
Nice.
say, Dan, once comes down the pipe, I know Donnie's kind of publicized on the page. When you're on the show, we'll pop it on Breakdown from the Barn. We'll publicize you. So let us know when you got a scene. We'll put it
Yep.
out for you.
Yeah, we'll get it
Absolutely will.
going. So speaking of Donnie, and for those that don't know, it's Donnie D. Philippus, New Jersey great. I know you guys founded the wrestling club Yale Street, started out in Donnie D. Philippus' garage. Now you're producing NCAA All-Americans coming out of there. A lot of top talent. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that club forming and everything there?
Yeah. So I met Donnie at Rutgers. And I always like to say he was a 17th year senior and I was a true freshman. But he had transferred back and I think he was doing his 5th year.
Yeah.
And I was a true freshman. We met there, hit it off, friends ever since. And then I guess after both of us had graduated and Donnie was, I don't think he had become a cop yet. Everyone was, the early 20s figuring out what we're doing.
Find yourself,
Yeah. And we were just both doing lessons. He had moved into this place with this detached garage. We threw mats down and both of us had found a couple people that we were just doing privates with. And that just became more regular. And then one day we were kind of like, we've each got a bunch of guys here. Why don't we have like a group class? So we started doing like Fridays we're talking 7 kids maybe in the group class. And it just kind of grew and grew and grew, word of mouth. And until eventually we moved into what was Yeti, and we're there. I don't even know. I'm bad with this
5
stuff.
years.
4 or 5 years. Okay.
Yeah. I think you guys were at Brawl House for a little bit, and then you got to Yeti. Yep.
Yeah. And then we pretty much doubled our size, moved over to the Piscataway location, and it's been awesome, man. Unexpected, which I think is the coolest part about the whole thing. Neither of us were trying to start a wrestling club, and that's kind of, I feel like, the beauty of what happened, and beyond my wildest dreams of what I wanted out of this thing.
Well, I'll tell you, Dan, it's cliched, but it's almost kind of like your acting career and others. It started with a passion for you doing something because you enjoyed it, because you were trying to do something not just for yourself but help somebody else. It's just something you're doing on the side, and it grew into something. I think when people try to do something because you say, I'm going to start a wrestling club and we're going to produce All-Americans in the next year, I think if you try to do that, just like if you try to do anything, it's going to backfire on you because you're not starting from the right spot. So it sounds like both the acting kind of spin and what you did with Yale Street is kind of the same concept. It's something I love to do. It's a passion. If I do it in my backyard, if I do it in Donnie's garage, it doesn't matter. We're doing what we love. And because of that, it grows from there. And I think people see that and people know that.
I think that's absolutely right. It was never about making money. Still isn't. And, I look at Donnie, couldn't ask for a better partner than him. There's nobody I know that loves this sport more than Donnie. And then to see, his youngest is my godson, and Dominic, his oldest, like to see them come up, literally be, born at the club, like, on the mats every day as little kids, just crawling around, and to see them grow up in the room and around the sport is really unbelievable. I'm just so happy to get to be a part of it.
Well, let's give you your moment today, because obviously we had Donnie on. I think was it late last year, John. He said very similar things to you, but bringing it back to kind of your career. Tell us about the call you got when, for those who don't know, that Coach Hilt is part of the Manalapan Hall of Fame now. What was it like to get that call, and tell us about that induction night?
So that one, that was a while ago now. It was probably like my first or second year out of college. So we're getting old, guys. That was a while ago now, but I just remember being very, very excited about it. I mean, Manalapan had this great tradition of wrestlers that came back to help the program, and these people that just loved it. I grew up with Steve Rivera in the room, and Indris Lujiwada Kusamo, who would come in every now and then.
Yeah, it's the best name ever in wrestling. I remember he took out Justin Hurst in the state finals a little before me. I remember that. Hurst, right?
It's like a Manalapan, I think, rite of passage, just to learn how to say his last name. And I don't even know if I'm saying it right, but I remember being pumped about being able to say it. But that was great. I think the most amazing thing about Manalapan Hall of Fame and then the Shore Conference Hall of
Oh,
Fame,
yep, I was going to go to that, the Shore Conference Hall of Fame. Yep.
which was a couple years ago. The best thing about both of those is we were so tight as a team. Like those are still my best friends that I see all the time. And every one of them was there. They were there at the Manalapan Hall of Fame. They were there at the Shore Conference Hall of Fame. And it's something I talk about, Eric. I've probably talked to you about this, about how you see a lot of kids going to private schools or, going elsewhere. And I'm not here to knock that, but just growing up with these guys, again, I started wrestling in 7th grade. So these are all these are the people I met when I came into the program. Through middle school, we were really good. And then we're okay freshman, sophomore year, and then just kind of broke out and I think we finished ranked 4th or 5th in the state, took 7 to states, placed 3, all from Manalapan.
Wow.
That was the most, you can't beat that. We won the Shore Conference, we won the Shore Conference tournament. We beat Goody and Jackson in the finals. I think first time. I still send him a picture every now and then.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. I feel bad. We should have asked him that on the broadcast. Maybe when we get back Scott back on, we'll throw that at him.
Oh, you gotta.
Yeah.
He loves being asked about that.
Yeah,
That's good stuff.
it's funny, Dan, because
great stuff there. And go ahead, Eric.
No, I was going to say, when you're talking about growing up in a program, staying local and wrestling with the guys that you grew up with, being kind of in that public environment, even from the club scene, because I remember, Dan, obviously with some of the duels that we've done, where some of the top duels, whether it's New Way or some of the other things, you got some of these clubs that are taking all these top level kids from this area. It's almost like a hodgepodge of kids. And yeah, they've got almost like a gold pool line up and down. But when you see like a Yale Street club where 70-80% of the kids are in that room 2-3 days a week, it's almost a similar feel. And I think, I don't know if you want to talk about that, even in the club scene, having guys who are tight and coming up together, I think creates the same environment. It may not come in first, but I think it creates a camaraderie that I think lasts forever.
Absolutely. And I know Donnie and I, Shane, Pete, everyone involved with Yale Street, we all agree. And we've had these conversations many times. It would be awesome. I'm sure it's great to go out with these star-studded teams and win these big tournaments. But back to kind of how Yale Street started, that's not what this is about. It's, for us, we're about taking kids and making them better. And kind of the biggest satisfaction that we get for sure out of coaching is, taking a kid who maybe hasn't won a single match or has won 2 or 3 matches and making them a district champ in a couple years and, state place winners, etc. That's the best. So why not have a team? And it's the same, going out and watching them compete and coaching kids like that. That's who I want to coach. I don't care if you've won Tulsa Nationals. You don't need me in your corner. You have 17 other coaches who are all trying to jump at the chance to be your coach. I want to coach a kid who I know that I'm in the room with every day. And that's kind of how the philosophy has been with Yale Street. And we're sticking to it, whether we're winning big dual tournaments or not. Ultimately, it's not what it's about, I don't think.
Yeah, and talking about that, I know you came on to a Rutgers team back there in early 2000s. You guys had a lot of those types of guys on those teams that really weren't the blue chip recruits, but there were a lot of tough guys in there. I mean, obviously Donnie transferred back, but then you had Amir Khan, you had Greg Alston, multiple time qualifier, Andy Rory, who unbelievable. You talk about luck, like him not being an All-American, and he was definitely one of the best top 4 or 5 guys in the country. Beat Joe Williams.
Joe Williams.
Anybody. He beat Joe Williams in Midland.
Absolutely.
That was a takedown. So why don't you tell us a little bit about coming onto that team and any good things about, or good stories about the Silver Fox back then?
Rutgers back then was it's funny. There is this perception looking back at that Rutgers was this terrible team before.
100%.
And
right.
I'm always out there kind of talking to myself saying that's not true. yeah, the spotlight wasn't on us. We didn't have these insane facilities. We for sure were not a top 10 team like they are now. And what Goodale and Pritzloff and all of them have done with the program is absolutely incredible. But we were, my freshman year, that team of guys that you just mentioned, that my freshman year, like we were tough. I think it was the first year I remember Sachi saying that every guy on the team maybe placed the EIWAs, I believe.
Yeah.
And we're talking, those years, arguably the EIWA was the second best conference in the country.
Yeah.
With all the teams that were in that. So, I certainly didn't reach what I wanted. I didn't reach the goals that I had set out for myself in college. I'm sure that a lot of people on my team would say the same thing, but we went out there, we competed hard, we wrestled hard, we practiced hard. We were, again, a family. That team, we were tight. Back to those are my best friends in the world still to this day. And as far as the Silver Fox goes, I mean, anyone that knows Sachi knows there's a lot of stories. Probably most I couldn't tell on this podcast. But one of my favorites that I tell to this day, I think we were wrestling at Army, and there was a kid. You remember Chris Ressa?
Yep.
One of my good friends, Chris Ressa, state finalist for Lenape Valley. Real tough. I think he was third in the EIWA that year too.
Qualifier. Yep.
He was wrestling. So his name's Chris Ressa, and it was Kessel, the great Gary Kessel was reffing, and I forget exactly what was going on. I think Ressa was in on a leg, right? And maybe Kessel called a stalemate or something, and Sachi went, "You suck, Kessel," and he turned around and he goes, "What'd you say, John?" And they're like in each other's face, and Sachi goes, "I said, suck it in, Ressa. I was saying, suck it in, Ressa." And he's like, "That's not what you said. That's not what you said, John." He's like, "I said, suck it in, Ressa." And he's like, "All right, whatever." And he turned around and I just remember Sachi like turning back to all of us and being like, and then like, getting away with it.
That's funny. That's funny, man. That's a good one. That one too. Hey, Wrestle on Real Estate. He's a big name right now.
That's right.
COO. He's a podcaster. Wrestle's doing a little bit of your world. He has a little bit of entertainment flavor.
Oh yeah,
I'm in the real estate world, so that's good.
He's
stuff.
always been one trying to talk.
Yeah, I can see Sachi running, doing that exact thing. So
that's great. That's the funny thing about Sachi. I think people see him as this old school Marine type, former military guy. But he had a weird sense of humor that I don't think people realized about him. And the joke is everyone calls me Wunk now, because when I was on the team, I was one of those kind of, guys who lasted maybe, a couple months. I walked out, came back. Okay. I put in 2 more solid years on the mat, and you talk about names, the Rutgers program, people think that it just got good 7 years ago. I think of Jason Hawk, Mike Kwapniewski, Rodney Van Ness, we mentioned Justin Hurst, Tom Wysocki, even your guys like Castellini, Ricardo Romero. There's a lot of quality wrestlers who've come through this program. But I remember coming back on the mat and out of nowhere, he just started calling me Wunk. Okay. And I swear to this day, he pronounced my name perfectly until I left. And when I came back, it's almost like it was a big middle finger to me. Like, you're going to come back on this mat, I'm going to butcher your name. So anyway, we're talking about stories in the New Brunswick and Rutgers scene. So what can you tell me, Dan, about 82 Central? Because I don't know if you know, that is actually a very legendary Rutgers wrestling house. And you got to keep it a little PG-13 because this is a family network.
Of course. And it's early. It's 9:00. But that's one of the funniest things ever is us discovering that we lived in the same house.
Yep.
What, 10 years apart or something like that?
Yep.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I can't remember how we discovered that. I think that maybe it was the wrestling house and then wasn't for a little while, but I don't know how we got back there. Yeah. But 7 of us.
A haunted house, it just drags you back. I don't know.
Yeah. And it was like 7 of us, maybe 8. I'm trying to remember. We had my buddy Mike living in like there was like a tiny little room that you just walk. It wasn't a room.
Yeah, you walk in straight to the right. It's almost like an extended closet.
Yes, and then there's the balcony. We had a guy living in there. So we had 7 or 8 guys living in there, and then downstairs was 7 baseball players. So we had a good time. And there was also did you have the connecting hallway? There was,
Of course.
like both of us on the side of the house had almost like a secret hallway that connected to both of our houses. So those doors would stay open. You know, we would just be going down there. They would be coming up. But that was a lot of fun. I'll tell you what, more than anything, a lot of 2 a.m., 3 a.m. wrestling matches on that living room.
I've heard about those. Yeah.
That I would ref. I would do this to Donnie all the time because Donnie, if anyone knows Donnie, he's pretty easy to rile up. So I would instigate a wrestling match, clear everything off. So I'd get him usually with a damn sick. I would get him in a damn sick going. And I would start reffing it. Every single time Donnie had a takedown, I'd be like, out of bounds, right? And you just see Donnie get more worked up.
Nice.
And then like the second Steve would maybe get in a leg, I'd be like, two, Donnie flipping out, throwing things. That was like, you know, there was some good late night matches there. But 82 was a great time. Really happy to continue, I guess, that tradition, finding out that it was a wrestling house.
I had some good times in that house. I didn't live there, but I ended up
John made his way
out to inebriated a few times at some parties, but that was a good house.
It's funny, Dan, because for our big thing was for that house, you had the back parking area that had and if anyone knows about New Brunswick, parking is at a premium. And the guys who this slick group of guys who moved in before us, and they thought we'll give you guys the back parking space and you guys can have the basement. Lo and behold, I'm like, fine, we'll take the basement, you guys, we'll figure parking out. But we realized how tough parking on the street was, but having access to that basement was the great thing. And John, that's what you remember, kind of the soda and water mixers we had down in the basement were a good time. So
that driveway, dude, the amount of times you would just get like a knock at the door from the guys downstairs or someone,
dude, you gotta move your car.
You gotta move your car. 10 cars in that freaking driveway.
Yep. So why don't we bring it back and kind of tie everything back together here? We're gonna do some rapid questions for you if you're ready for it, Dan. Okay.
Sure.
The first question I have, we asked Scott Goodell a similar question, but different, and he gave a really good answer. So I don't want you to cheat on this one because I'm a little ticked off that Scott did what he did, but you have one choice. You can win a world gold medal or an Oscar. Which one are you taking?
Man, an Oscar. Probably.
It's probably better money wise, you know.
It might be a little bit better. Yeah, and you know, I'm old. I need that Oscar now.
You gotta be on TV, man. You gotta be on prime time.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, who plays the better police officer? Russell Crowe, Dan Hilt, or Donnie DeFilippis?
Dan Hilt, easy.
Nice.
Donnie's way go. I'd have to go with me, although Crow is a close second. He's not bad. He's an okay actor.
Close second, got it. Last one for me. Did you have to make a choice between, you kind of touched on this, but did you have to make a choice between acting and wrestling? And do you regret anything you've done on either side, whether you didn't commit to one or the other? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, the choice came early. So when I started wrestling in 7th grade, I was also in the school play at that time. And I was leaving rehearsal early to get to practice late. And the wrestling coach didn't mind. He was happy that I was in the room. I started hearing it from the director.
Right.
And he told me, you got to make a choice. 7th grade.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm liking this wrestling thing. I want to see this out. So I quit the play and made that choice. And
glad you did.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
All right, Dan, this last one, I'm going to share my screen here because we're going to get you. I got a good clip. This is after the Sunny D days, but this is early on in the career. So I want to get your reaction to this one. This is some of your very early work. I watched it. I'm going to show the lead up to it first, and then we'll show your part here. And I want to get your thoughts on this one. This is some of your early stuff. I had to dig up through the crates, if you will.
Oh God!
In the morning.
Oh wait, hold up. I need to get the audio on this too. Give me a second.
Oh no! I didn't know people knew that this thing existed. I already know
we find it, man. Don't worry, Dan. We're gonna.
We get them.
The bus, check weight, and then rest until weigh-ins, unless you need to work out a little more. Sounds simple, right? Well, for one genius freshman by the name of Dan Hilt, this simple schedule didn't make too much sense, as Coach Sachi and Lita spent an hour looking for him.
Coach Sachi have no idea what's going on. They're looking for Danny Hilt. They think he didn't get on the bus, but he did. Coach counted 15 people. We'll only draw 15 people. Coaches, these guys make me mad today too. Always telling the obvious, asking everyone, did they check their weight? Yeah, we checked our weight. Why wouldn't we check our weight? What kind of question is that? Like we want to be over. You should have done what?
Disappeared. This is amazing. No one can find the kid. He's unaccounted for. As far as I know, he's not wrestling anymore.
Here's my side. That's that side of the story. Here's my side of the story. I took it upon myself. The whole team does their weigh and check the scale thing. I was weighing myself. I'm 0.1 over, and I see that I have to feel like I gotta take a crap. Take advantage of that, of course. 0.1, squeeze out a little ball, good to go. Right? So I don't tell anyone, and I don't think I need to. I'm sitting on the toilet. I'm chilling, squeezing a couple little dots out, and all of a sudden I'm seeing like shoes going back and forth. I hear.
All right, this is some great impressions coming up, guys. I'm gonna give this to you.
And I thought was Sachi's voice. I wasn't yet familiar with the voice, with Sachi's voice, because I was a freshman. Wasn't yet familiar. But I hear the voice and I hear, Mike, where'd he go? Is he over there, Mike? Is he over there? And I'm trying to see under the soles, and I'm seeing the little feet going back and forth. What then turned out to be Lita and Sachi. It was them looking for me, right? So I knew, then I figured out it was them, but I wasn't saying anything because I was just chilling. Finally get done, and I go check my weight, and all of a sudden there's like a stampede running at me with Lita in the front. They're running like, where were you? Where the hell were you? We're weighing in. What are you weighing? This and that. I'm like, I'm 0.1 over. This is where it gets good. 0.1 over. And this was before. Lita says to me, you know they're not going to give that to you, right? And I was like, I'm thinking, is this guy for real? Obviously, I know they're not giving me 0.1. I haven't been around forever, but I've been around the block a couple times. I know you got to make the weight. So I'm like, yes, I know I have to make the weight. So he's trying to run me through a shadow drill thing on like the mats, and I'm like, Coach, weigh-ins are in like 40 minutes or maybe a half hour or something like that. I'm like, I'm gonna lose 0.1. Long story short, he puts me in his whole getup. I'm running around the freaking room for an hour. I was like a half under. It's ridiculous. That's the Navy story.
All right, so you made the weight. Why don't you tell us about that? That's from Amir Khan, 2004, Rutgers Wrestling the season. Check it out on YouTube, guys. But
Season with the Knights, right? That's what it's called.
Yeah, Season with the Knights, 2004.
Amir, one of my favorite people. How about that hair, huh?
That's looking good. That's looking good.
Back when I had it, I think all that dye made it all fall out. Yeah, I actually remember that like it was yesterday, and it's got to be 2004, right? Something like that. Yeah, that was funny. Lita and Sachi were both hilarious and crazy in their own ways. And everyone was looking, all I did was go to the bathroom, and people are flipping out thinking that I didn't get on the bus. Oh God. I have just one. You asked for a Silver Fox story before. I have to tell this one Lita story because it's one of my favorites. So Lita, I don't know how old he was at that time, but he wasn't a young buck, and we would leave practice, and you would see Lita on the stepper in our locker room, full sauna suit, garbage bags, full sweats on the stepper, looking like he's about to have a heart attack. And we'd be like, Lita, what are you doing? He's like, I got Weight Watchers tonight. If I don't make weight, my wife's going to freaking kill me. He was cut like what an old school wrestler. He was eating whatever he wanted and then cutting weight a couple hours before his Weight Watcher meetings.
Listen, Dan, let me tell you, that goes back. He used to do that when I was there too.
Did he?
He'd be on there with the sweatsuit, and it's kind of like, listen, guys, I always tell people it's the stupidest thing. If you're trying to really lose weight, don't put the rubber suit on because it's a temporary winter weight thing, But it's funny he used to wear that. Well, hey, Great story, Dan. Great having you. Make sure you follow our show. We'll keep up with the Dan Hilt stuff. Good shows in Hollywood. Make sure you guys follow us on all the platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. We're on everything. Hey, check out our Facebook and Instagram. We got some memes coming out. Our meme game is going through the roof. Check them out. And hey, Roll Junkie, 15% off, www.rolljunkie.com. Best wrestling jiu-jitsu gear out there. See you guys later. Relentless Pursuit, baby.